I'm very happy you're all here. And I think you guys all know me, but for any other audience in the future, I'm Jeffrey Carr, and I'm a long-term devotee of a spiritual teacher named Gururaj Ananda Yogi. And what I do is I read some of the Satsangs and I make some commentary. And the Satsangs are ones that I've taken from verbatim transcripts and clean them up a little bit. I edited them a little bit, I changed the syntax a little bit, but I don't reorder the paragraphs, and I don't certainly try very hard not to change the message of our guru. I always run on the assumption that the guru is the expert, and that I am an earnest and devoted student of the guru. And in this case, I took the Satsang, The Nature of Projection. I hope some of you may have downloaded the copy I sent out with you. It's relatively short because it was part of one of his question and answer sessions where he exhibited his considerable powers, what we might call in the Indian tradition, his siddhi, his powers, by answering right off the top of his head questions from the audience, some of them very sophisticated and very demanding, that even quite sophisticated spiritual masters would have difficulty answering them. And he would always give extremely, I thought, beautifully organized responses. So in this case, people asked about three very complicated and very subtle issues in spirituality. One was on the nature of projection, which is what we're going to talk about momentarily. One was on what is contemplation, and I'll do that one in the future sometime. And the other one is the nature of the individual soul, or what the Indian tradition called the jiva, the embodied consciousness, embodied soul that transmigrates from life to life. Okay, so it's 5 pages, it's not very long. However, I think it starts out where we're pretty sure we know what he's talking about. And we're sort of listening, oh yeah, that's true. I agree with that. I understand that. But I now know, this is 40 odd years after me being with the guru, that it's a lot more subtle. There was another level to what projection that he's going to talk about, which is quite surprising, very profound, and quite surprising, and stuff that I've only really begin to understand in the last 10 years or so. So to start off, all of us have been doing spiritual practices, and all of us, I'm sure, know a little bit about psychology, enough to know about the unconscious, the way everybody understands it, and that we have patterns, that we have habits, that we have addiction. We all understand those things. And one of those concepts, which are pretty commonly understood among all of us spiritual types, is this notion of projection. It's a term that I think came originally from the Western psychologist Carl Jung. And he meant it to say something that way back when he was writing, this is sort of the teens and 20s of the last century, were quite surprising to people. He said, you know, those things that you see, those situations and people that you see outside of yourselves, a lot of your way of understanding it and perceiving them are being influenced by the unconscious. What is the unconscious? Habits, beliefs, that we aren't fully aware of, that we're holding, that are influencing our experience of the world out there. Jung had an elaborate theory of what he called archetypes. And an easy way of understanding an archetype, he said we have inborn patterns of something like the mother, the wise man, the wizened old wisdom woman, you know, the old witch. These are internal archetypes which we endlessly portray out there in the world, but they represent inward psychological patterns. And he said, Jung said, we were always in a dance for the archetypes. We get attracted to someone, we don't know why, because deep down psychologically, they remind us of our father who we adored. Or we really worship, you know, a wise old woman. She represents sort of an archetype of a wise old witch, you know, and we really like this person out there because they fit into a predetermined pattern that we have within ourselves that Jung called archetypes. More familiarly, we all are very aware of our habits of projecting our own stuff. We call it spiritual types, call it the stuff, on outside situations. For example, so-and-so we look at and say, oh, I listened to what they said and they sound awfully conservative. And what we mean by that is we already have a predetermined belief. We don't like certain opinions. We don't like when people believe or say certain things. That person I'm a vegan. And whenever people kill animals to eat, I really don't like that. That means if you meet somebody and you watch them cutting into a steak, you're going to think badly of them. And it's just based on predetermined beliefs and judgments that you already hold. They may be the most saintly person in the world. Guess what? The Dalai Lama eats meat. But nevertheless, I'm a vegan and I don't like people that eat meat. Or as I was listening today, while I was down painting today, I was listening to political pundits going on and on about, I was a little surprised to find out how biased the news media is. No, I shouldn't be surprised, but I was. You know, we get subconsciously influenced by our own belief systems, also our habits. We tend to like people who are like us. We tend to be a little bit more suspicious of people who aren't like us. This is all very familiar territory, and it all deals with projection, our deep, abiding habit in life of seeing the world out there based on our own beliefs and opinions that are in here. A lot of it is, we're familiar with the notion of the unconscious. So you were badly treated by your father or mother when you were a child. So people that remind you of your father and mother, you're not aware of it, but you inwardly get a little uneasy about a certain person because they happen to remind you of some childhood conflict. We're triggered, the term is, from something from our unconscious. So when Gururaj brings up this term projection, that's the kind of territory that I think we're all pretty familiar with. We've been over this stuff, and a lot of us, I was meditating today, and I'm always surprised. The old gook gurgles up. What is the old gook? Oh, an old incident with conversation with somebody, or something that happened with someone, or my relationship with a person. And because I've been meditating so long, and I do as I think you guys do, I note it and say, oh my God, I'm once again living out that story. On that notion of story, by the way, Byron Katie is one of our current spiritual teachers who does an incredible job of working with people's stories. What is a story? It's a set of beliefs that you tend to project, you find out in the world, like, I can never win because I'm a woman, or I can't, people will always hate me because I'm fat. There's some story you have, and you tend to see it, and you'll often find, oh, that happened because ... and you'll trot out your little story, which is based on a bunch of beliefs that you have. Byron Katie is spectacular at having people examine their little scenarios, their little programming, their little stories that explain why their life the way it is the way it is. All that is background to our guru's satsang. And it's short enough that I think I'm going to read it through once, and then I'm going to come back and go through it a little bit more slowly. And he actually, once again, he gets into some, it isn't the way we just think it is. He's telling us quite a bit more than just what I just went through of popular notions of what projection is. Okay? So somebody asked him about what's the nature of projection. So Gururaj says, what is the nature of projection? Projection has no nature of its own, but it's like an alien that comes to America and becomes naturalized or domiciled. So projection, if you want to use that word creation, is created by our understandings of things and by the patternings of our minds. Now, who is the projector and what is the projection? To understand the projector, let's take the analogy of a cinema machine. The projector may remain the same. It's the same projector, but in the same projector, you can put in different films. You can put in a cowboy film or a love drama or all that stuff you see nowadays, the murder and the violence and all that bloodshed and all that, but it's still the same projector. Depending upon what film you put into that projector, that is what is creating the projection outside you. If we want to see a proper projection, then we have to use the right film. When we use the right film, then the projection will be something we want to see. Projection is a very important part of our lives. You cannot exist without any form of projection. While sitting here, for example, I am also a projection. The lights are on me, and if this were all in darkness, you wouldn't be able to see me. The light that is on me is what gets registered in your retina, and that in turn sends a message to your brain, and the brain in turn recognizes that projection that is sitting in front of you. So in that way, everything in life is just a projection, according to our patterning, according to the film we put into the projector. The more highly developed a person is spiritually, the more clarity their projection is going to have. The light won't be so dim and the sound will be good. You'll have stereophonic sound. You can feel like you're sitting in the midst of this film. That's where you should sit, in the midst of your own projections. You should feel that projection. You should live that projection. And if it's a bad projection, you don't try to discard the projector. You discard the film. You discard the patterning. That's how clarity is achieved. If you can see clearly, that which you project will be clear too. But if your mind isn't clear, if it's muddled, then naturally things will be muddled. A reflection of the sun will be very clear in a still pond. But if that pond is dirty and muddy, then naturally that reflection isn't going to be clear. The great danger of projection is the unclear, muddled mind. When the mind is uncleared and muddled, the projection won't be clear. And then you're not going to blame yourself, you're going to blame that projection. Oh, you'll say that projection is bad. But have you cleaned the lens of your projector? That lens might be dirty and full of dust. That's how these great misunderstandings develop in life. That's how you become judgmental, because of your own projections. Your own projection is because of your individuality. Individuality, as a part of the projection, has its own nature. Your individuality is a combination of the various factors of thought forms, patternings, and your environment. This makes you think that you're an individual thinking such and such a thought, or that you're an individual doing such and such a work. But you know, the individual does not think, and an individual doesn't do any work at all. You people grumble about, oh, I've been working so hard, but they've not done anything. This is because the individual is not the doer. He's just an instrument. And because of the projection, he feels himself to be an individual and that he is the doer of things. For example, let's say that you become pregnant or your wife becomes pregnant. Fine. But are you the doer of that child that has been born or will be born? You aren't the doer. You're just the instrument. You are just a planter. The man never made the seed that impregnates the woman, and the woman did not make the ovum, the egg that gets impregnated. They are universal forces. When that is realized, you will lose your individuality. Your individuality is dominated by the ego, which is a mixture of all the things I've just described, so that you'll say, well, I am Gururaj. The ego adds haughtiness, and with haughtiness, you will lose your innocence. You lose your humility. Because you think you're an individual, you lose the greatest quality of life that should be there in a person. You're not an individual, you are just Maya. That is name and form. But the you are universal. You are connected to everything. You are that universal force that can never be separated from anything at all. You are sitting there and I am sitting here. But do you think that we're apart? No, we're not. If we had a high-powered microscope, you would find all the atoms that are connecting the two of us. This is what constitutes mass, although Einstein got it a bit wrong. We're just a mass of matter, but we've made a mess. All is one, and I am that all. When I say I am all, I don't mean just me only. I mean all of you are that one. There's nothing else but oneness. The highest realization one can have is that you lose that feeling of individuality. And instead you have that feeling of oneness. This will bring about all those wonderful virtues that are inherent in you. Your kindness, compassion, your sympathy. You'll feel hurt, but your hurt will also hurt me. When you laugh, I laugh. There's a story in one of the scriptures of a deity that was asked, aren't you going to eat? You know, you make an offering to God. Aren't you going to eat? And the deity says, why do I need to eat when there are millions of mouths eating for me? Why do I need to breathe when there are millions of noses breathing for me? That story is very symbolic. It's just an allegory. But what it means is that all is one. Your breath is the same as my breath. Your smile is my smile. Your tears are your tears. And your very heartbeat is my heartbeat. There's no difference. There's no separation. That is the highest realization. And it comes about by clarifying. Clarifying the ego, not trying to annihilate it. That's impossible. You clarify the ego so that you can see. As the passage in the Bible puts it, people have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear. When you see the truth, oneness exists everywhere. Your individuality is just a projection because of the non-clarity of the ego self. So make it clear. Wipe the windows clean and let the sun come in. Let it shine. It shines forever. The sun never goes away in spiritual life. The sun is always there. It's only in this material world that you think, oh, the sun is gone and night is here. The sun hasn't disappeared. It's just taken a bend over to the other side. It's still there. And if you have eyes to see that the sun is on the other side of the world, you can see right through you can see right through this world and still see the sun. So then where's the night? It is daytime, all the time in the joy of the sunlight. Well, I mustn't get too poetic now. He ended there and he would make some jokes, and then he went on to the next question. So that's a beautiful short satsang, and it helps actually. It's only 5 pages because some of them are very long, and they're too much. They're very complicated. I mean, it's just a lot being said. So let's go through this. So he starts off, somebody said, what's the nature of projection? So the first thing he said, my thesis is he says everything in the first paragraph, and you'll often say everything in the first sentence. There's a famous way the Buddhists teach that I've been taught. They say, if you confront a great master like Gururaj and you ask them a question, they'll answer it very, very simply. Like you say, what's the nature of truth? They'll simply go, you might go like this. By the way, the tradition is you ask the same questions over and over and over again, because each time you get a deeper understanding. But let's say you look at the teachers like, what is some kind of Zen thing? What do you mean? Say, okay. The truth is that everything is happening right now. There isn't any more to it. Everything's happening right now. And you might say, oh, now I understand. I needed that little extra bit of understanding. Okay. But a lot of us, that's not enough. We need the teacher to go whack. Truth is just happening all right now. And then they need to explain. You see, there really isn't any future, and they need to explain it more. And for most of us, this being also, very much so, I need it explained not hundreds, thousands of times. And each time you get a little deeper understanding. So Gururaj says right at the beginning, says, what's the nature of projection? Projection has no nature of its own. He's actually said everything right there. Projection has no nature of its own. But it's like an alien that comes to America and becomes naturalized or domiciled. He meant that this stuff, which we think is out there, it's stuff that just lives within us. Got it? It's become naturalized or domiciled. It's an alien. These beliefs we have, we pick them up from TV, we pick them up from the newspapers, we pick it up from the media, and then we take them in and we think that they're real. They become domiciled. They have no truth, they have no nature, they're just words, they're just air. So projection, if you want to use that creation, in other words, we create our own reality, is created by our understanding of things and by the patternings of our minds. What's that mean? Like, oh, that guy there, yeah, he's a Republican, yeah, or he's a Democrat, yeah, blah, blah, blah. That's, and I don't like it because they blah, 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 blah. We're interpreting something we see out there based on our beliefs, our understandings of things, and in turn based on our patternings. And I'll say more about that. Well, I'll say it right now. You're a vegan because you are you have a certain set of experiences in this life, a certain kind of educational background, a certain kind of cultural baggage, a certain set of beliefs. If you were in a different culture, in a different place, raised by different parents, were read to a different set of schools, you would eat meat with great gusto. It's just stuff that you've picked up and you've taken on as your beliefs. That may, I don't mean anything about vegans. I'm just thinking about because I just ate a bunch of chicken for dinner. It's not. It can be anything, any kind of political opinion. It's just because of your where you went to school and your friends and all these stuff. And if you had a different set of friends or went to a different set of school, you'd be something else. Really. Really. Now, this is more interesting. What is the projector And what is the projection? This is where Gururaj gets more profound. To understand the projector, let's take the analogy of a cinema machine. The projector remains the same. It's the same projector, but in this same projector, you can put in different films. You can put in a cowboy film or a love drama or the stuff you see nowadays, the murder and the violence and the bloodshed and all that. But it's the same projector. Depending on what film you put into the projector, that's what creates the projection outside of you. I think that's a marvelous. Depending on what film you put into the projector, that creates the projection outside of you. Two things are implied. One thing we can understand easily. Again, I'll ditto just what I said. Depending on your schooling, your beliefs, your family upbringing, all that stuff, all that forms patterns of beliefs that are the film that you project out there on the world. So you'd be walking along the street, oh God, that person looks hot. Based on what? Based on your patternings, your conditioning. Or, oh, that person over there, I know that person over there is, that must be a musician. Boy, look at all the tats on that guy. That must be blah, blah, blah. You have all these beliefs and you see that. Not only that, if you've noticed that, you'll be walking along the street, you'll pick out things that your friend right next to you won't even notice. Like when I was Charlotte, I'm very aware of little dogs, my daughter, because we love little dogs. So whenever I say, oh, that little dog. But if I'm with someone who's an artist, I won't notice a little dog, or I might, but I'll notice certain pictures. You know, it's just based on conditioning. But the interesting thing is what Gururaj is talking about, the projector. We all get it, okay? Depending on our conditioning, it's different films we can put in, all right? Based on our patterns belief. But the projector, he's saying, stays the same. What is the projector through which we are experiencing all of these beliefs, these opinions, these projections? What is the projector that he's referring to here that doesn't change? Ah. So he lets that sit, because that's a big one to me. And he goes on. If you want to see a proper projection, then you have to use the right film. When we use the right film, then the projection will be something that you want to see. Let's say your life sucks. Change the film. It's your projection. Change the film. Projection is a very important part of our lives. You cannot exist without any form of projection. A lot of us, including me at one point, would think, for example, with meditation, we will stop projecting. We won't have to live with our projections. He's telling us that that's nonsense. I'm sorry. He'll go on. As human beings, it's all about what we perceive, what we experience. And our experiences, he's saying, are the films that we put into our life. What are those films? Our patternings, our beliefs, our behaviors, and also our conditioning. A conditioning is where, you know, a doggy bit you once, so after that, watch out for that type of dog. They might bite you. Pit bull might bite you. It's based on beliefs, okay? So he's saying here, we cannot exist without our beliefs and opinions. He goes on to later on, I'll share later on, that's actually what we are. It's just our beliefs and opinions, our experiences, and our karmas. They get technical about it. You can't exist without them. This is really weird what he says next. So projection, he's saying it's the whole hint is basically how you look at life, what you choose to emphasize. And as good spiritual practitioners, you should spend a long time saying, I have a lot of trouble in relationships. Oh, what kind of relationships? Well, they're relationships with men or women. Huh, what unconscious film clips. After all, you realize you are based on your beliefs. and you're experiencing your film, you will pick out the situations in life which will conform to the film that you see. You don't like people who eat meat, you'll see a lot of people eating meat because that really gets you. Okay? Do you understand? You will make the reality which you're patterned to experience. It's also more profound than that, because actually, well, maybe I'll talk about it later. It's more profound than that. It's very strange. Well, I'll mention it now. One of my very dear teachers, a wonderful Buddhist teacher named Jay Littman, he once said that, let's say we're always getting, we feel that people are always lying to us. This is a karmic patterning in our life. And it's often based on previous inability to tell the truth or deal with the truth. This is partly belief stuff, but this has been taught to me and I've found it to be true in my life. As you slowly deal with the karma associated with those experiences, you will find mysteriously and slowly they disappear out of your life. And you slowly notice that people aren't lying to you anymore the way they used to. It's based on karmic patterns. That's very deep stuff. It's deeper than what popular culture will often accept. We often come into life with karmic patternings, or samskaras, what Gururaj would call them. And we need to live these things out. We can ameliorate them, meaning by spiritual practices, we can make the effects less acute. But we still, the film, in other words, is not always easy to get rid of. For example, the film of being white or black or brown or a certain ethnicity, that's a film which is not so easy to change. It can be ameliorated, but we're born into this life with certain kinds of experiences, then different kinds of film scripts that we're going to live out. In many ways, whether you don't have a lot to say, you're going to live this out. So Gururaj goes on to explain the subtle concept that there really isn't a fixed reality out there. And I meant to tell you about, let me finish my story about Jay Littman, my great teacher. I said something about, wanting things to be different. And he said, well, just wait. He says, this is not really real out there anyway. It's just based on our projections. That's my addition. As your karma changes, the world will change around you because it's basically you that you're looking at. The light is on me, Gururaj is using an analogy. But if this were darkness, you wouldn't see me. The light that is on me gets registered by your retina, which in turn sends the message to your brain, and the brain in turn recognizes the projection that's sitting in front of you. So in that way, everything in life is a projection according to our patterning, according to the film we put into the projector. Have you guys reflected, I know you have, that the way we hear the story is, there's light rays out here. The light rays get picked up in the retina sends it to the brain, the visual processing in the brain puts together the patterning, makes a picture out of it, identifies that as a picture of Gururaj or whatever we're picture of, and then we put our story and our spin on it and explain what relevance that image has to me. It's a very subtle complex. For example, right now I'm looking at my hand. How do I know it's my hand? I don't know, but somehow I know instantly that's my hand. Now, the weird thing is this is all just electrical firings in the brain, we're told. This is just electrical firings in the brain. Even that is just a story that some scientists told us. If you think about it, anything that's out there is a perception so-called in here. But even that is just an explanation. It's been told, and this is worth meditating on, all of you. There's only one thing you know. Do you know what that is? There's an experience going on. Do you know that you exist? You have a name, but somebody gave you that name at some point. You don't know if that's really true. Do you really know if your parents are really there? This is all just beliefs and all that. All that you know, basically, is there's an experience going on. There's not a nothingness. Why am I telling you this? That's what Gururaj is getting at. I'll repeat the passage. While sitting here, I'm also just a projection. He said, I'm just happening within whatever mind is, your experience. I'm just an experience within your experience. I'm just a projection. The light is on me, but if this were darkness, you would not see me. All you see is your experience. Got it? Gururaj, if there weren't that light, that we wouldn't perceive anything, it wouldn't be picked up in the retina and nothing would happen. He's saying that basically he only exists when a whole bunch of things happen all together at a certain time, at a certain place, in a certain way, and we have an experience based on those things. So in that way, everything in life is a projection, according to our patterning, according to the film that we put in the projector. Some of us, we look at Gururaj, we'll say, oh, he's our guru. Other people say, oh, there's some old guy up there. Other people think, oh, when's lunch? Other people won't even be in the building. Right? There's no outside. There's not even an inside. There's just experience. The more highly developed the person is spiritually, the more clarity his projection will have. Still has a projection. The light will not be dim and the sound will be good. You'll have a stereophonic sound. You feel as if you're sitting in the midst of the film. This is where you should sit, in the midst of your own projection. You should feel that projection. Live with that projection. And if it's a bad projection, you don't discard the projector, you discard the film. You discard the patterning. That's how clarity is achieved. Now, I find this very significant. It is a truth in my life, and I've been taught, is when we are spiritual practitioners, we don't live so much, we live in the midst of our projection in life. Imagine a certain, the old story about, there was a shoemaker that went to a great city, and the shoemaker, all he could see was shoes. When we have very strong fixed opinions and belief systems, and we're very uptight and we're very nervous and we're very shut down, we have a relatively limited experience of life. Gururaj is saying, enjoy the projection. Sit in the middle of your projection and vividly feel it. Thank you, Gururaj. One thing I love about him, the Buddhists tend to put down, it's all illusion, it's all meaningless. It's not true. Gururaj says, no, this is all you got is your projections. So live it to the hilt. Clarity projections means you look at, look at that person over there with all those wonderful tattoos and the guitar and that hair, and that guy looks really cool. That's great. That versus, oh my God, look at that person. Let's get out of here. It looks scary. It looks dangerous. I hate people with tattoos. What a difference in life. We chose that response or let's just say that's all based on our conditioning. Gururaj is saying, clarify your projections. You can't get rid of the projection because you're going to project whether you want to or not. You can't get rid of it. By the way, it still begs the question, what exactly does he mean by the projector as opposed to all the projections? He'll get to that later. If you see clearly, that which you project will be clear too. It means to see life straightforwardly as it is, without our incredible stories and our overlay of judgment and opinions. And it needs to be this way, and I need it to be that way, and what's in it for me, and I don't like that, or I want it to be this way. Get rid of it. Just see simply the way it is. But if your mind isn't clear, if it's muddy, then naturally things are going to be muddied. There's spirituality, this is true. There is nothing wrong with what's out there. You don't like Trump? That's your problem. Lots of people love Trump. You don't like the people who eat meat? That's your problem. You want things to be a certain way? Well, so does everybody else. So what? That's just let it be. It's natural that you want things to be different the way they are. What's really weird, I think is very weird, is what on earth makes you think that's you or you? How come that person over there is that person and you're over here? That's weird. He'll go on to that. A reflection of the sun is very clear in a still pond, but if that pond is muddied and dirty, then naturally that reflection isn't going to be clear. The great danger of projection is the muddied, unclear mind. When the mind is unclear and muddied, your projection will not be clear. Then you are not going to blame yourself, you're going to blame the projection. Oh, you'll say that projection is bad. You know, what's interesting in here is that in my experience, there are like really smart people and dumber people. But I've noticed that the smart people very frequently have this very muddied mind. So are the dumb people, but I mean, the smart people can have very muddy mind. Just because you're so-called smart doesn't save you from living in sometimes a very opinionated, very limited universe where you're projecting all of your beliefs and opinions and seeing the universe the way you need to see it. He's saying, don't throw away the projector, the thing which is making all this happen. Change the film, clarify your vision. When you cleanse the lens of your projector, that lens might be full of dirt and full of dust. That's how these great misunderstandings develop in life. And that's how you become judgmental, because of your projections. Your own projection is because of your individuality. Individuality is part of this projection, has its own nature. Remember earlier, he said the projection itself has no nature. There's no real reality in it, in your beliefs and opinions. There isn't anything real in there. It's just your beliefs and opinions. It's just stuff you're throwing out, judgments, descriptions you're giving. Some people will say this is a Republican. Other people just say it's an old guy. It's just, these are just your projections. There's no reality in your projections. However, your individuality, as part of this projection, it has its own nature. This is very interesting. Your individuality is just a combination of various factors of thought forms, patternings, and the environment. Brilliant, Gururaj. A lot of us will read that and say, oh, yeah. Well, he's saying something pretty weird. He's saying that's all you are. That's all you think. Well, you know, I'm what? I'm a guy. I'm an artist. I'm a Republican or a Democrat, and I believe in this, and blah, 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 blah. All that is just your, as he said, thought forms, your patterning, and the environment. Like Charlotte and I are Californians. Who told us that? Charlotte, do we live in California? I don't know. That's what they tell us. And they tell us we live in this state where everybody shits on the streets and there's homeless and it's a disaster. And then other people say, no, California is great. I don't know. I mean, it's just stuff I hear. I go outside and I see the sun shining. They're the ones that tell me it's California. And I believe it on most of the time, but I don't know. Your individuality is just a combination of various factors of thought forms and the environment. What makes you think that you are an individual thinking such and such a thought, or an individual doing such and such a work. But the individual doesn't think, and the individual doesn't do any work. People grumble about working. Oh, I've been working so hard, but they haven't done anything. This is because the individual is not the doer. He is just the instrument. We're all familiar with that term, right? I am not the doer. It means something. It means we aren't even individuals. Because of those projections, you feel yourself to be an individual and that you're doing things. For example, you or your wife become pregnant. Fine. But are you the doer of that child who's been born or will be born? You're not the doer, you're just an instrument. You're just a planter. The man never made the seed that impregnates, and the woman didn't make the ovum that gets impregnated. They're made by universal forces. When that is realized, you lose individuality. You guys, if you haven't done it already, I suggest you contemplate that you don't know where your thoughts come from. Things just bubble up in my head. You're in meditation. You're thinking about food, and then you're with your breath, or you're with presence, and then suddenly you're off in a fantasy. This stuff is just coming through the projector. Just coming through the projector. Endless patternings, endless thoughts, experiences, just flowing through all the stuff. You pick out certain of those things and you say, well, that's my interior experience. Other things you're saying, I hear a bird, for example. You have a thought, I'm hearing a bird, and you believe that that bird is outside you. You're experiencing that bird in the synapses of your brain. Your belief, your fantasy that there's a bird out there in the tree singing to you, those are just your beliefs. You say, well, I go outside and I can see the bird. You're seeing something inside your own experience, your own mind. You're not seeing a bird. Saying, how is all this happening? The projector. The projector is just projecting through you, depending on the film that you put in, depending on your beliefs and your false belief in yourself as an individual. All that is just collective opinions and experiences and thought forms. It's universal forces. Individuality is dominated by ego. That's the part of you that says, well, I'm me, and I have this and that. That's me, which is a mixture of all the things I've described, so that I can say I'm Gururaj. But that ego will also add haughtiness. And with a haughtiness means, I know right. Don't try to tell me what to believe. I've got my own opinion. And I don't want to listen to you try to tell me what to do. We're all thinking that kind of stuff. How dare that person say that? That person's full of crap. You're full of crap, or not. I mean, this stuff that's just passing through the brain. It's just film, movies. The ego adds haughtiness, and with the haughtiness, you lose your innocence, you lose your humility. Because you think you are an individual, you lose the greatest qualities of life that should be there in a person. You're not an individual, you are Maya, illusion, the great illusion, which is just name and form. What's name and form means? You're the one who decided this is your hand. You're the one who decided you have a name. What are you that decided that? You didn't even decide. Something that's just part of a structure, Maya, that you've given importance to as the ego. And the ego is not bad. It's the little force that just, out of all the phenomena which is happening to the stars, the galaxies, the smells, the moment-to-moment experiences, some of that you say, this is my life. Other people say that's other people's problems. That's something you simply make up from moment to moment. Gururaj is saying, I'm sorry, but you don't even exist. There is existence. He's not denying that. There is existence, but you don't exist. You're something you make up out of existence. We listen, oh, that really, that's really upsetting. Yeah, it is upsetting to the ego, but life is so full of splendor. He goes on to that. It makes life better. And Gururaj will go on to explain, why does it make life better? You are universal, he says. You're connected to everything. When Charlotte and I see the little doggies that we like, there are doggies. They exist within us. There are experiences of the little doggies that we love. That's my doggie. You lean over and you say, hi, doggie. It's because that joyousness, you chose to have the doggie in your experience. You could have went, oh, I'm busy. I'm busy thinking about Trump. I'm going to walk and go home and be angry about Trump. Why not? And then other of us will, oh, look at the little dog. You see, it's all us anyway. You're connected to everything. You are the universal force that can never be separated from anything at all. What's he getting at here? You are the projector. You're not the projections. You are the projector. You're not the projections. They come and go. You are that universal force that can't be separated from anything at all. You are sitting here and I'm sitting here. But do you think we're apart? No, we aren't. If we had a high-powered microscope, you would find that all these atoms are connecting the two of us. And this is what constitutes mass, although Einstein had it a bit wrong. Why did he have it wrong? Because Einstein thought we were here and there were atoms out there. Now, if you said atom, but Einstein, we're atoms too, aren't we? Yes, of course we are. Everything is mass and energy. So what is consciousness? I'm conscious. Okay, so what's the relationship between mass and energy and consciousness or being aware? Oh, that's an interesting question. That's why Gururaj says, this is what constitutes mass, although Einstein had it a bit wrong. We're a mass of matter, but we made a mess because we thought we were something separate from the projector. We thought we were the projections. That's why we made a mess. We think we are what we think. We're that which has the experience of thinking. We're the experience itself, not the thing that's doing the experiencing. All is one, and I am that all. And when I say I am that all, I don't mean just me. I mean all of you are that one. There's nothing else but oneness. The highest realization one can have is to lose that feeling of individuality and to have that feeling of oneness. We've heard this kind of stuff a billion times before. Think about that famous phrase when Jesus said, he says, you love thy neighbor as thyself. All of us say, oh yes, that we should really do that. What Jesus means there is that just, we should love that other person as much as we love ourselves. No, Jesus didn't say that. Jesus didn't say that. He said to love thy neighbor as thyself. You are your neighbor. The neighbor is not separate from you. You are both an experience within the projector. The projector is divinity. There is nothing separate from one. There isn't a you and an it. It's only the experience. The experience experiences itself. That's what Jesus meant when I and my Father are one. That's what he meant, really. Reading a book written by some Christian. I won't tell you who she is. She's full of shit. I mean, this poor woman. I know the parables better than she does, and she does workshops on these things. I said, I'll read her, and I said, darling, give Jesus more credit. But she's just me anyway, so what the hell? This will bring about those wonderful virtues that are inherent in you, the kindness and compassion and sympathy. This is really wonderful. You are hurt, but your hurt will hurt me. When you laugh, I laugh. The Buddhists call that sympathetic joy. They're saying that when you see something wonderful, you automatically feel wonderful yourself. It's not like, oh, how come they're happy? I want happiness too. No, you see something wonderful, you feel wonderful. And compassion, what the Buddhists call compassion, the true meaning of compassion is not to feel sorry for, oh, those poor people. I feel so much compassion for them. No, he means that you feel their pain. You don't distinguish between your pain and the pain of other beings. That's compassion. Not feeling sorry for something. Sympathetic joy is to feel that joy as your own joy. That's sympathetic joy because it is your own joy. There's only one. When I laugh, when you laugh, I laugh. I went to my little Rupert Spira spiritual study group, and I looked at them one day and said, you know, the Ramana Maharshi is quoted, he said something really remarkable. I mean, wait, you know, okay, what did he say? And he said, people asked Ramana Maharshi, says, what are you doing? What about all those other suffering people? What are you doing about all those other suffering people? And Ramana Maharshi looked at him and said, what other people? They all looked at me for a moment like I was crazy. And I was embarrassed because I realized I said something they didn't understand. Yeah, Ramana Maharshi said, there is only one. One God. There's a story in one of the scriptures of the deity that would ask, aren't you going to eat? Because, you know, in traditional worship, we think we have to do something good for Jesus to make him love us. Like, we have to be like Jesus and take in the poor, feed the poor. We have to, and in Indian, people will make food, feed it to the stone statue, which is the deity. Okay. Aren't you going to eat? And the deity said, why do I need to eat when there are millions of mouths eating for me? And why do I need to breathe when there are millions of noses breathing for me? That story is very symbolic. It's an allegory. But what it means is that all is one. That was, when I was at a retreat recently, I did it. There's a famous story. It's not quite, it's called Gutai's Finger. It's a famous Zen story about, oh, actually it does fit. All is one. I better not tell it to you. All is one. It's a famous Zen master. They'd ask, he says, oh, master, what is the nature of truth? What? He'd go, what? His name was Gutai. One. He'd hold that finger up. It was called his one finger Zen. Your breath is my breath. Your smile is my smile. Your tears are my tears. And your very heartbeat is my heartbeat. There's no difference. And there's no separation. That's the highest realization. And that comes by clarifying. Clarifying the ego, not trying to annihilate it. That's impossible. In other words, your projections of yourself as an individual and having your own feelings. A lot of us, including this boy here, would try to clarify ourselves by getting rid of what we think we are. I've actually tried to meditate where I try to have no self. But you see, there's only one self, it's God. So when you say, I am that I am, Yahweh, I am that is Aham Brahman. I am Brahman. There's one self. In Hindu scriptures, one of the Mahavyas, one of the great teachers talked about the supreme deity, the supreme self. There's one self. The ego is when you pretend you're separate from that. When you realize that everything is I, you say like Ramana Maharshi, well, what other person? I am that supreme self. I am Ishvara. I am Siva. I and my Father are one. That's how you say, but that's crazy. I mean, what about all the other people? They're me. When they suffer, I suffer. When they eat, I eat. There's no difference. You no longer say that this pile of stuff over here is me and you out there are separate from me. You're saying that stuff over there and here, it's all happening in experience. It's all happening in awareness. It's all one. When you see truth, oneness exists everywhere. The individuality that you feel is just a projection because of the non-clarity of the ego self. So you make it clear. Wipe the windows clean and the sun will come in. How do you do that, by the way? You know, that's what we do in spiritual practices, constantly observing what's going on and realizing the witness consciousness, the awareness, the divinity, the projector within me is just projecting name and form. Enjoy the joke. Do not become the joke, you jokers. Enjoy the joke. Enjoy the projections. But you aren't the projections. You're the projector. So make it clear. Wipe those windows clean and let the sun come in and let it shine because it shines forever. The sun never goes away in spiritual life. All of us have had those dark nights of the soul, like, oh, God has abandoned me. How could God abandon anything? God's everything. There's no other place for God to go. So right in the depths of your misery and your self-consciousness, oh, I'm so miserable. Fine, your movie tonight is a horror show. Okay, you're watching a horror show. Oh, I'm having so much trouble at work. You're watching a war film tonight. Okay. The sun is always there. It's just the material world. It's just your projections that make you think, oh, the sun is gone and the night is here. The sun hasn't disappeared. This basic nature of existence, beingness. How could beingness disappear? How could it not be? How? It is what it is, it is. The sun hasn't disappeared, it's just taken a bend to the other side. It's still there. And if you have eyes to see that the sun is on the other side of the world, in other words, if you can see through your temporary misery and see, for example, you may be miserable, but the person down the block is ecstatic. Well, if you and the person are the same, great. You're having a bad pattern moment over here, but over here it's doing great. Look through the material world and see the sun always shining. The sun of divinity is always shining. You can see right through that world and still see the sun. So where's the night then? It's daytime all the time in the joy of that sunlight. Well, I mustn't become too poetic now. No, I'm tempted to tell you Gutai's finger, but it's not pertinent enough. It's not pertinent enough. Krishna's laughing all the time. This is his play. As he played with the gopis in Vrindavan, danced with them and played his flute for them. You guys know that's a quote, one of my favorite satsangs, The Smile of Krishna. And one of the great lessons, a way to read the Bhagavad Gita, is that Arjuna is with Krishna, and Arjuna is just overwhelmed by life. It's too much. He says, I can't do this. I'm going to kill all these people that I love. I like all these. They're my friends, kinsmen. They're my teachers. And Krishna basically looks at it and says, yes, shut up. Says, you don't do anything. I'm doing everything. I'm God. You think you're doing stuff? He says, you're just doing whatever your nature compels you to do. It's in your nature. You're going to do it. It's your dharma, whether you want to or not. All you can do is try to not do what you're meant to do. That's fine. You can make yourself even more miserable, but you're going to, basically, because Krishna says, I myself am never without action. This activity, this manifestation, which is the projector projecting. It's like what Gururaj talks about the manifestor and the manifestation, the candle and the heat. It's the nature of the projector to project. Part of its joy. So the takeaways from this is that what we think of as being an individual, there isn't such a thing as an individual. It's just pattern relationships. The other thing is clarifying the projection. Your practices, spiritual practices, are to make you lose your individuality and to realize that you're all of it. Anything that shows up in the projection, the world, that's you. You can get upset, but that's just more of your patterns. It's not real. Okay, let's open it up. Oop. And I think I've done just about an hour, which is great. All right. All right, everybody's unmuted. Oh, Anna? Comments?
Lots of vision.
It is a lot to take in. I realize spiritual life takes a very, well, that's why we're here, frankly. It's why this dream showed up. Our whole dream is about gaining, purifying. Another word for clarifying is purifying our mixed perceptions, what the Buddhists call our deluded perception. Nothing wrong with us, just deluded. We're ignorant. We're deluded. Nothing wrong with anything.
I just love the way it's so simple. Just change the movie.
You're not unmuted.
Huh?
Unmute.
No,
I just love the way it's so simple. Just change the movie.
But you
Change
see,
the channel.
the trouble is we can't, our karma is such that, you know how you can change the music is just learn to smile through it.
But it is simple in the sense that if you learn to have that attitude, and well, that's what we're getting into attachments now. But I'm echoing, so it's terrible. But it's so much easier to live life when I have that attitude that it's just so easy just to change the channel. It's like you always say, it's just a movie.
Yeah. 1,000 years ago in Est, when I took Est, way back in 77, 78.
Yay, yes.
Oh yeah, Est was great. Anyway, something I loved. The trainer at the time, I love the term trainer, because that was to plug us in. That's an Est term. He says it's so much easier to ride the horse in the direction that's going.
Yeah.
Which means to accept.
Yes. I
You
have
got a
to.
shitty movie? Okay, you can try to change it, but guess what? It might take some doing. Let's say you're broke all the time. You have a pattern. Sooner or later, if you really don't like being a broke, sooner or later, either you'll stop caring about it or you'll make money, really, if you do spiritual practices. Or you could just be broke your whole freaking life. So, okay. It's worse things being broke. In other words, you got a movie. It's something. The S thing is, well, it's easier just to, okay, there's the movie. All right. I have to watch this damn movie. So I'll say, Beth, like that, yes, what you can do is that you don't have to take the movie so seriously. If you're scared to death, you don't like a passage in the movie, go up the kitchen and get yourself something to drink, just get yourself some orange juice or something and come back and the monster will have gone by that time. Or you're having a nightmare. Well, it's a night, okay, you're having a nightmare. There's plenty of them go around.
Yep. Yesterday's lesson for the weekend prep course, Ramon spoke the exact thing when he discussed the 3 yogas during the day, defining the day. And it was exactly that. Like, change your thought. Just go breathe. Do some pranayama. Do your mantra. Do, sing, dance, do something. Just change the thought. It's just your thought. That's all you have is that. Change it, And that seems to be the message I'm hearing a lot the last couple of weeks in various ways. And I get it in knowledge-wise, and I do in moments feel like I actually experience it. And when I do in those moments or those parts of days, or you are really becoming part of a flow. There is this flow that you have not directed, that is just kind of working in your way, for you. The experience is there for you. It's a different way of experiencing.
Who's
And
you?
I can recognize that in moments. The trick is to be able to be like Dalai Lama and just walk around smiling all the time because you totally get it.
Well, maybe not, because that's the point is
I don't know.
you should smile, but you're living the movie you're going to live, and it's silly to pretend it's different than what it is.
Right.
If you're really upset about something, okay, can you smile and just live through the patternings of being upset about something? In other words, just accept it.
Not when I'm upset.
Constant teaching on acceptance. We have to remember this is really difficult. We aren't individuals.
Right.
We're bundles of patternings, beliefs, and whatever. But the experience or divinity is everything in life. Everything we look at is us. That's very hard.
It's very hard.
It's truth. It really is the truth. But to look at everything in here, this is all happening. I think for me, it helps that silly scientific analogy. In our culture, we believe there's such a thing called the brain, and that what's happening is that there's synapses in the brain. I've never seen this thing, but that's what the scientists tell me. So tell yourself, oh, this is all just happening within the brain. The reason I'm so upset is because I'm a human being and I have all these expectations and beliefs, and this upsets me. It wouldn't upset a cow, but it upsets me. Okay, that's the movie.
Right.
Makes it a little easier to deal with it. That's the movie. The other thing is that I love you mentioned singing and dancing. Somebody was telling me very recently, who was it? Running around the room just dancing and singing. Somebody told me that. I just lit up when they told me that. You're watching a terrible movie, or you get you get something in the mail that says, you owe $700. Okay, or somebody died. Well, maybe you can try singing and dancing. Just now, I'm not going to preach because this is the Gururaj Satsang. we as human beings, my God, do we want to change the circumstances of our life? Oh, we want to so bad.
Mm.
Oh, we want it to be different than the way it is. Oh, boy, do we. If it were just so, oh, it would be so much better. That's called suffering. I don't want it to be what it is. I
Right.
want it to be different.
So I was reminded of an experience I had where somebody was suing me.
I remember.
Yeah. And we were at a retreat together. Rupa's in, I was pretty disturbed by this. This was a big deal. I was being sued or threatened to be sued for $50,000. This was like going to put me out of business. I mean, to me, it was the end of the world if this happens, Now what am I going to do, right? This wasn't pretend, it didn't feel like pretend. It wasn't like, oh yeah, let's go sing and dance. I mean, you saw me. You probably know better than I know at the time, because this was, 15 years ago or more? Almost 20.
Yep.
And what you told me to do, or you suggested that I do, was that I go home and do some meditation and some Guru Shakti. And during my Guru Shakti, that I imagine that I am not separate from this person who is suing me. And that we're absolutely that. It's not only that we're just alike, it's that we are in fact the same. And that, there's just nothing but love there. And, that's about as far from like imaginable in the state of mind that I was in. But that's what I tried to do in the Guru Shakti. And the Guru Shakti experience lasted for, I don't know, half an hour. And there were some great hallucinations with it, the multi-armed deity or something that I interpreted to be the destroyer, but I really don't know what I saw, but it was appearing where the face of Gururaj was. And I had my eyes just, wide open, just looking right at it, and it was just appearing there. So after this session, I left to go to the lawyers, and I sat in the office, and this was where the axe was going to come down and the big decision was going to be made. It was make or break and all that. And I got into the office, and the receptionist had me sit down in the reception room. She said, it'll be just a few minutes and Tad will be right with you, And it was an hour and a half later, and he never was right with me. She came out an hour and a half later and said, well, that's it. You can go home now. It's all taken care of. Tad will fill you in later. And what he filled me in was that the whole thing had basically gone poof. Now, it could have also gone a different way, I suppose. There's a part of me that doesn't really believe that I can petition the Lord with prayer, or that it's like an ATM where I can just go in and insert my God card and, everything gets resolved. But all I know is that something dramatically changed in that particular situation. And that really made me sit up and take notice. And there is other stuff, like what Maria was saying, move a muscle, change a thought. I mean, if I sit there and I wallow in the same stuff and I keep thinking it and I can't stop thinking, you know what? You can distract yourself with something. Go do something different.
Yeah.
And what I find is that does get me out of a rut, because I am just a conditioned blob of whatever, and if I think too much and if I spend too much time obsessing about stuff, that doesn't really help me.
That's
what helps,
very wise.
Well, if I go out and I just take an action of some sort in the present, like, oh, well, the garbage needs to be taken out, or, oh, whatever. It doesn't have to be anything glamorous. It'll change something. And, I mean, addicts, we're all addicts, really, of samsara, right?
Yep.
So I'm an addict.
We're addicts of suffering.
Yeah.
We suffer.
And the reason addicts that are, alcoholics, for example, we don't really have a drinking problem. We have a thinking problem.
Yeah,
We're addicted.
You have it's attached to beingness. You have it's a body issue. It's a being issue. The incarnate issue.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot to it.
In other words, you can't think your way out of not being an alcoholic. Your body is going to crave it.
Well, there's the physical addiction, but the what sets us up for it is our thinking patterns.
Yeah.
And that it's basically the same thing that all spiritual traditions teach, is that the cause of all suffering is attachment to name and form, and we relate to the projection, not to the projector.
Yeah.
And so we're we all suffer from it. I probably suffer from it just a little less than I did 20 years ago.
You do.
Because
you know what it is.
Yeah, I know what it is intellectually, and I can see it sometimes.
But also spiritually, John.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, you do.
You'll have to talk to my spirit, I guess. All I know is that I feel better than I used to.
Yeah.
And that there is improvement. So I don't like the idea that there's nothing I can do. Okay. I don't believe that that's really the right answer. But I also don't believe that there's a lot I can do sometimes. I really do believe that whatever it is, when it's me, right, is what we're saying, it's us, it's the self, the big self. But all this stuff works out in the little self in its own time, in the big self's time. We all have to live out that karma, those patternings. I had to have every damn drink. Every damn one, and there ain't no shorting it, because if I think I can just study the book and get better, well, it's helpful to read the book, but self-knowledge avails in the sense that I consider that knowledge. That doesn't help me. Experience of it, seeing it, does. And so, like, the fact that I've watched things get better, and I've watched things that look like horrible situations resolved, the 17th destruction of the AMS ashram isn't going to be so traumatic. Okay? I mean, because all of life is like that. And when you see that, when it's all change all the time, 24/7,
that's when everything changes.
Yeah.
If you're miserable, sit around for long enough like that, eventually things will change, or you'll die, and you'll come back into another life, and maybe it'll be better.
Yes. In Vermont, we say if you don't like the weather,
just wait.
So,
and the other thing, if you would like to have better patterns, if you would like to switch the movie, work on the karma management, which means live a virtuous life, quote unquote. Eventually your karma will switch around. If you stop, you got no whole drill. You can slowly change, but you know what? A lot of us are going to live out certain patterns in this life. We forget that as good God-fearing Americans. We think we can change everything. No, you can't. Some of us, this is the way it's going to be, okay? That doesn't mean you can't laugh a little bit or smile about it, because it's not you anyway.
They taught me that I could exercise restraint of tongue and pen. Of course, that didn't really stop what was happening in between my ears, but I didn't have to apologize.
Yes.
And little by little,
it'll get better.
It gets better, but
Pleasure.
It's painfully slow. And when I think it's better, if I think I'm on top of it, I'm ready for a fall.
By the way, John, you're illustrating what it means here to have clear seeing. The more highly developed the person is spiritually, the more clarity his projection will have. What does that mean? It means that you see things the way they are and not over overlays of beliefs, fantasy, hopes, and fears. You see things, that's the way they are, okay? That's good.
Well, I've been wrong before, so I know not to. If I'm pounding a square peg into a round hole with a big mallet, something's wrong.
Well, we all do that. Something with
Yeah,
certain,
no, I know. We all, we're all given to each other with a piece of each other's puzzle too, So it's kind of like there's a reason all this is happening.
but we're
It's not all. We're really all
characters
one.
in God's movie. We're just movie characters. We're in a movie. This is a
That's
movie.
right.
And it's not even our movie, it's the movie.
It's really, it's the movie. Yeah. Yeah. You'd be surprised how many Republicans I know who voted for Hillary because they couldn't stand Trump. And what people think about politics and all the people, and we pigeonhole each other. And then what we do is we hate each other. We really need to have less of that, right? Obviously. But anyway, I love all of you.
All right.
And I am so happy that you did this, Jeff, because that was great.
Jeff, thank you for doing this.
Oh no, I love doing this. You guys know I love doing this. But so it's my joy. I wish more people tune in. Thank you, Anna, for showing up. I wish more people tune in. Ramon sent me a real, the term that came up in my mind was corker. I think it was like, I brought that from British sitcom TV, a corker. He sent me a real good corker. And I'm doing an edit job on it right now. It's about the end of the world, the massive apocalypse.
Oh,
Oh,
is this GR's talk on the 2020 to 50
Yes. Ramon
apocalypse?
sent me a big long thing, and
Yeah, it's long.
but I'm editing it, and
Good,
it reads a heck of a lot better once you edit it a bit. But
good.
it's about all you need is love.
Love.
Da, 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 da. All you need is love. Love. Okay, and it's like, who doesn't want to believe that? Because, and then we can go back to hating whomever we hate. By the way, John, I'm listening to conservative commentators, and I'm really getting I'm reading out this. I'm channeling my nasty old man. I'm going to become a Republican. And these are people that talk about what an evil shit Obama is and all the things that the Democrats did. And yes, it all sounds totally plausible and believable. Why not?
well,
Who knows?
There's always more. There's all the
Yeah.
sides of the. There's all the
thing that we
facets
have
of
to
the sides of the
realize-
facet.
Whenever we look beneath the surface of the movie, there's another movie right beneath the surface, and then another one, and another one. There's more projection.
Like
Yeah.
fractals.
They're all like fractals. It just gets
Fractal
more
reality.
and more involved. This is God's play. This is part of the movie. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to sign off, guys. It was
Yep,
great
thank you
tonight.
guys
Thank
very
you.
much.
Love everybody.
All right.
Ciao.
Bye.
Happy
Bye,
Thanksgiving.
Anna.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a happy turkey day or a big vegetable day, depending on what affiliation you have.
Yes.
I'm having some of both.
Good. Happy
Having it all.
vegetable day. Oh, and Charlotte's going to come down.
Bye,
and we're gonna-
Anna. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving. Love you all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, loves.
We'll see you. Safe travels.
All right. Safe travel.